Sometimes life throws you exactly what you need when you least expect it. Marcus Chen had been crawling under kitchen sinks and rewiring ancient circuit breakers for 12 years, but he'd never seen anything like the machine sitting in Dr. Victoria Sterling's penthouse apartment. The sleek black device hummed with an otherworldly energy, its crystalline components casting prismatic light across the walls of the converted warehouse space that overlooked the San Francisco Bay. What Marcus didn't know was that this wasn't just any computer. It was a quantum processor worth more than most countries, annual budgets, and the woman who owned it had been searching for someone exactly like him for 2 decades. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Chen pulled his battered Honda Civic into the underground garage of the Meridian Tower at exactly 7:30 a.m., the same time he'd been arriving for the past 3 months, since landing the maintenance contract for the luxury residential building. The car's engine wheezed to a stop, protesting another day of San Francisco's punishing hills, and Marcus grabbed his tool bag from the passenger seat with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd learned to make every minute count. At 34, Marcus carried the weight of responsibility like a physical burden across his shoulders. His weathered hands told the story of countless repairs, emergency calls, and 16-hour days spent keeping other people's lives running smoothly while his own seemed to be falling apart at the seams. The irony wasn't lost on him that he spent his days fixing things for people who could afford to replace anything that broke, while he and his daughter Lily made do with second-hand everything. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor gave Marcus a moment to check his reflection in the polished steel doors. His work uniform was clean but faded, the Chen Electronics and Repair logo embroidered on the chest pocket a reminder of dreams that had been scaled down to survival. His father had started the business with grand visions of building a technology empire in Silicon Valley. Marcus had inherited debt, outdated equipment, and a reputation for being reliable if not particularly innovative. Dr. Victoria Sterling's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of Meridian Tower, and Marcus had been there twice before to fix minor electrical issues. Each visit had left him slightly unsettled, though he couldn't quite articulate why. The apartment itself was stunning, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the bay, but there was something about the space that felt more like a laboratory than a home. The woman who answered the door was younger than Marcus had expected when he'd first met her 3 months ago. Dr. Sterling appeared to be in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and intelligent green eyes that seemed to catalog and analyze everything they encountered. She dressed in expensive but practical clothing that suggested someone who valued function over fashion, and she moved with the purposeful efficiency of a person accustomed to being the smartest one in any room. "Mr. Chen," she said, stepping aside to allow him entry. "Thank you for coming so early. I know this isn't a typical service call, but I have a problem that requires your particular expertise." Marcus followed her through the apartment, noting the unusual combination of cutting-edge technology and Spartan living conditions. The kitchen was equipped with professional-grade appliances that looked like they'd never been used. The living room contained a single chair positioned in front of a massive display screen that currently showed scrolling lines of code in languages Marcus didn't recognize. Books on quantum physics, advanced mathematics, and computer science were stacked on every available surface. "What seems to be the issue, Dr. Sterling?" Marcus asked, setting down his tool bag and mentally preparing for another routine repair job. "It's in my private workspace," she said, leading him toward a door he'd never seen opened during his previous visits. "And please, call me Victoria. We're going to be working together for a while." The workspace beyond the door took Marcus's breath away. The room was easily twice the size of his entire apartment, filled with equipment that belonged in a science fiction movie rather than a residential building. Multiple computer workstations lined the walls, their screens displaying complex mathematical equations and three-dimensional models that seemed to rotate and evolve in real time. But it was the machine in the center of the room that commanded attention. The quantum computer stood about 6 feet tall, its housing a seamless blend of black metal and transparent crystal that revealed the intricate components within. Cooling systems hummed quietly around its base, maintaining the near-absolute zero temperatures required for quantum processing. The device seemed to pulse with its own internal light, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. "This is incredible," Marcus whispered, approaching the machine with the reverence of someone who understood he was looking at technology worth more than he'd earned in several lifetimes. "I've read about quantum computers, but I've never seen one in person. This must have cost more than most people's houses," Victoria finished. "And right now, it's completely non-functional." Marcus circled the machine, taking in the complexity of its construction. Fiber optic cables snaked between components like luminous veins, carrying information at speeds that defied comprehension. The quantum processor itself was housed in a chamber that maintained conditions colder than deep space, allowing subatomic particles to exist in multiple states simultaneously. "What exactly is wrong with it?" Marcus asked, though he suspected the answer would be far beyond his expertise. Victoria activated a tablet and showed him a series of diagnostic readings that might as well have been written in ancient Sanskrit. 3 days ago, the system experienced what appears to be a cascade failure in the quantum coherence stabilizers. The cooling systems are functioning perfectly, the power supply is stable, but the quantum states keep collapsing before calculations can be completed. Marcus studied the diagnostic data, recognizing some of the electrical patterns but understanding very little of the quantum mechanics involved. "Dr. Sterling, I fix washing machines and rewire outlets. I'm not sure I'm qualified to work on something like this." Victoria's expression intensified, and for a moment Marcus saw something that looked like desperation beneath her composed exterior. "Mr. Chen, may I ask you something personal?" "I suppose so. What did you study before you became a repair technician?" The question hit Marcus like cold water. He'd spent years trying to forget the dreams he'd abandoned, when reality had forced him to choose between theoretical pursuits and paying rent. "I have a master's degree in electrical engineering from Berkeley. I was working on my doctorate in quantum computing when my father died, and I had to take over the family business." Victoria's eyes lit up with something that looked like triumph. "I knew it. I've been watching you work, Mr. Chen. The way you diagnose problems, the intuitive understanding you have of complex systems, the fact that you can look at something broken and see exactly what needs to be fixed. You're not just a repair technician. You're exactly what I've been looking for." Marcus felt uncomfortable under her intense scrutiny. Looking for? Someone who understands both the theoretical foundations of quantum computing and the practical realities of making complex systems work in the real world. Someone who can bridge the gap between pure science and applied engineering. She walked to one of the workstations and pulled up what appeared to be a personnel file with Marcus's photograph at the top. "You graduated summa cum laude from Berkeley with a thesis on quantum error correction in large..." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Veil Systems. Your advisor was Dr. James Morrison, one of the pioneers of quantum computing architecture. You published 3 papers in peer-reviewed journals before you left academia. Marcus stared at the screen, seeing his younger self's accomplishments displayed like artifacts from someone else's life. "How did you get access to my academic records?" "I make it my business to know things, Mr. Chen. The question is whether you're willing to remember who you used to be before life forced you to become someone else." The weight of Victoria's words settled over Marcus like a heavy blanket. He thought about Lily, who was probably getting ready for school right now in their cramped apartment across town. He thought about the stack of bills on his kitchen table and the clients depending on him to keep their appliances running. He thought about the dreams he'd buried under years of practical necessity. "Even if I wanted to help," Marcus said carefully, "I don't have access to the kind of equipment needed to diagnose quantum systems. My tools are designed for conventional electronics." Victoria smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "Mr. Chen, money is not an obstacle for me. If you're willing to work on this project, I can provide you with whatever equipment you need. More importantly, I can offer you something I suspect you haven't had in a very long time, which is the opportunity to use your mind for something more challenging than unclogging garbage disposals." Marcus looked again at the quantum computer, its crystalline components casting rainbow patterns across the workspace walls. The machine represented everything he'd once dreamed of working on, the cutting edge of human technological achievement. But it also represented risks he couldn't afford to take. "Dr. Sterling, I appreciate the offer, but I have responsibilities. My daughter depends on me, and I can't risk our financial stability on a project that might not work out. Victoria walked to a desk drawer and removed a checkbook with the kind of casual confidence that suggested money was truly no object. What if I told you that solving this problem would be worth more to you than several years of your current income? What if I told you that this project could change not just your life, but your daughter's future as well? Marcus felt his resolve wavering. The practical part of his mind calculated how much debt he could pay off, how much he could put away for Lily's college fund, how different their lives could be with real financial security. But the cynical part of his mind, honed by years of disappointment, whispered that offers that sounded too good to be true usually were. What exactly are you asking me to do? Victoria returned to the quantum computer, running her hand along its smooth housing with something approaching affection. This machine represents 20 years of my life's work, Mr. Chen. It's not just a computer. It's the prototype for technology that could revolutionize everything from drug discovery to climate modeling to artificial intelligence. But it's useless if I can't keep it running. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I'm asking you to help me complete the most important project of my career. In return, I'm prepared to offer you a consulting fee of $50,000, plus bonuses based on the complexity of the repairs required. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. $50,000 was more than he typically earned in 6 months. It was enough to pay off his father's business debts, cover Lily's school expenses for the next 2 years, and maybe even start rebuilding the dreams he'd abandoned. That's a very generous offer, Marcus said slowly. But I have to ask why you're willing to pay so much for something you could probably get done by specialists who work exclusively with quantum systems. Victoria's expression darkened slightly. Because the specialists I've consulted either don't understand the specific challenges of this particular design, or they're not people I can trust with sensitive information. This project has implications that go far beyond academic research, Mr. Chen. There are people who would do almost anything to get their hands on this technology. The mention of dangerous implications made Marcus hesitate. He'd spent his adult life avoiding complications, focusing on simple problems with straightforward solutions. Whatever Victoria was involved in sounded like exactly the kind of situation he'd learned to avoid. What kind of implications? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, seemingly weighing how much to reveal. Mr. Chen, what do you know about the current state of quantum computing in the private sector? I know that tech companies like IBM and Google have made significant advances, but most quantum computers are still experimental and require specialized facilities to operate. That's what most people believe. The reality is that several corporations and government agencies have been working on practical quantum applications for years. The technology exists, but it's been carefully controlled and limited to a small number of organizations. Victoria gestured toward her machine. This computer represents a breakthrough that could democratize quantum computing, making it accessible to researchers and institutions that have been locked out of the field by cost and complexity. Some people would prefer to keep that technology locked away. Marcus studied Victoria's face, trying to read the truth beneath her carefully chosen words. There was something she wasn't telling him, some crucial detail that would explain her urgency and her willingness to pay far more than market rates for his services. Dr. Sterling, I need to be completely honest with you. This offer sounds incredible, but I'm a single father with limited resources and no safety net. If I take on a project like this and something goes wrong, if there are legal issues or if dangerous people get involved, I don't have the resources to protect myself or my daughter. Victoria's expression softened, and for the first time Marcus saw her as something other than an intimidating genius with unlimited resources. Mr. Chen, I understand your concerns better than you might think. I've spent most of my adult life taking risks that other people wouldn't take, pursuing goals that other people said were impossible. But I've never asked anyone to take risks they couldn't afford. She walked to another workstation and pulled up what appeared to be a legal document. If you agree to work on this project, I'll provide you with a comprehensive insurance policy that covers any potential legal issues, plus a completion bonus of an additional $25,000 if we can get the system running within the next month. Marcus felt dizzy as he processed the numbers. $75,000 was more money than he'd ever possessed at one time. It was enough to change his and Lily's lives in fundamental ways, to give them choices they'd never had before. Can I have some time to think about this? Of course, But Mr. Chen, I should mention that time is a factor. Every day this system remains offline represents a significant setback to my research timeline. I was hoping to have your answer by tomorrow morning. Marcus nodded, understanding the pressure but appreciating that she wasn't demanding an immediate decision. I'll call you tomorrow with my answer. As Marcus gathered his tools and prepared to leave, Victoria walked him to the door with the courtesy of someone who understood the weight of the decision she'd asked him to make. Mr. Chen, there's one more thing I'd like you to consider. What's that? Your daughter. How old is she? Lily just turned 8. Victoria smiled with genuine warmth. 8 years old. The age when children start to understand that their parents are real people, with dreams and ambitions beyond just providing for them. The age when they begin to form opinions about what it means to pursue something meaningful with your life. The observation hit Marcus harder than he'd expected. Lily had indeed been asking more questions lately about his work, about why he seemed tired all the time, about whether he enjoyed fixing other people's broken things. Children had a way of seeing through adult facades to the truth underneath. What I'm offering you isn't just money, Mr. Chen. It's the chance to show your daughter that her father is someone who takes on challenges that matter. Someone who uses his intelligence for something more significant than keeping washing machines running. After Victoria closed the door, Marcus stood in the hallway for several minutes, staring at the elevator buttons without pressing them. The conversation had awakened something in him that he thought was permanently buried under years of practical necessity. The memory of what it felt like to work on problems that challenged his intellect, to be part of something larger than day-to-day survival. The elevator ride to the parking garage gave Marcus time to think about the implications of Victoria's offer. $75,000 would solve most of his immediate financial problems, but it would also mean taking on risks he'd spent years avoiding. Working with cutting-edge technology meant working with people who had cutting-edge enemies. As Marcus drove home through the morning traffic, he found himself thinking about his father's dreams for Chen Electronics and Repair. David Chen had immigrated from Taiwan with a degree in electrical engineering and boundless optimism about America's opportunities for ambitious immigrants. He'd started the business with the goal of eventually expanding into high-tech consulting and advanced electronics development. Instead, David had spent 20 years fixing household appliances and installing ceiling fans, watching his dreams shrink to fit the reality of supporting a family in one of the world's most expensive cities. When he died of a heart attack at 59, he'd left Marcus a business that was stable but uninspiring, profitable but uninspiring. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of Westfield Elementary School just as the morning bell rang. Through the chain-link fence, he could see Lily in the playground with her classmates, her dark hair pulled back in pigtails and her face animated as she explained something to a group of children who were listening with rapt attention. Even at 8 years old, Lily had inherited the Chen family tendency toward intense focus and natural leadership. Lily spotted him through the fence and waved enthusiastically before running toward her classroom. Marcus waved back, feeling the familiar tightness in his chest that came with watching his daughter navigate a world that he sometimes felt ill-equipped to prepare her for. Lily was brilliant, curious, and ambitious in the way that only children could be. She deserved better than a father who'd given up on his dreams before she was old enough to understand what dreams were worth pursuing. The drive to his first appointment of the day took Marcus through neighborhoods that represented different versions of the life he might have lived. The modest suburbs where middle-class families struggled with mortgages and minivan payments. The luxury developments where successful professionals lived behind gates and security systems. The rundown areas where people like him scraped together enough money to keep their families housed and fed, while more ambitious people built empires around them. Marcus's first client of the day was Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly woman whose garbage disposal had been making ominous grinding noises for the past week. Her apartment was in a building that had seen better decades, but she kept it immaculately clean and decorated with family photographs that told the story of children and grandchildren who'd moved away to pursue opportunities she'd never had. "Marcus, you're such a good boy," Mrs. Rodriguez said as he worked under her kitchen sink, disassembling the disposal mechanism. "Your daughter is so lucky to have a father who works so hard to take care of her." The comment stung more than Marcus expected. He'd always prided himself on being a good provider. But Victoria's offer had forced him to confront the difference between providing for someone and actually giving them a chance at something better. The Disposal problem turned out to be a simple matter of removing a piece of broken glass that had jammed the grinding mechanism. Marcus completed the repair in 15 minutes, but Mrs. Rodriguez insisted on paying him for a full hour of work and sending him home with leftover enchiladas for Lily's dinner. As Marcus drove to his next appointment, he found himself thinking about the conversation he'd had with Lily the previous evening. She'd been working on a science project about the solar system, and she'd asked him whether he thought people would ever travel to other planets. "I don't know, sweetheart," he'd said. "That kind of technology is very complicated and expensive. But somebody has to figure out how to do it, right?" Lily had persisted. "Somebody has to be the first person to solve the hard problems." At the time, Marcus had deflected the question with vague reassurances about how smart people in universities and big companies were working on those kinds of challenges. But now he wondered whether he'd been teaching his daughter that difficult problems were someone else's responsibility. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from his next client, asking him to reschedule the appointment due to a family emergency. Instead of feeling frustrated by the lost income, Marcus found himself relieved to have unexpected free time to think about Victoria's proposition. He drove to Golden Gate Park and found a bench overlooking the De Young Museum, where families were enjoying the kind of leisurely morning that his work schedule rarely allowed. Children ran between art installations while their parents read newspapers and drank coffee from expensive cups. It was the kind of scene that Marcus usually observed with a mixture of envy and resignation, but today it made him think about possibilities rather than limitations. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Elena Vasquez, his ex-wife and Lily's mother. Elena had remarried 2 years ago to a software engineer who worked for one of the major tech companies, and she'd been trying to convince Marcus to pursue opportunities that would give him more financial stability and professional satisfaction. "Marcus?" Elena's voice carried the slightly cautious tone she used when he called during work hours. "Is everything okay? You don't usually call in the middle of the day." "Everything's fine. I just wanted to run something by you, get your opinion on a decision I'm trying to make." Elena's tone warmed slightly. Despite their divorce, they'd maintained a cordial relationship focused on providing Lily with the stability that their marriage hadn't been able to achieve. "What kind of decision?" Marcus found himself describing Victoria's offer in broad terms, leaving out the specific details about quantum computing and focusing on the financial opportunity and professional challenge. Elena listened without interrupting, asking occasional questions that demonstrated her understanding of a situation. $75,000, Elena repeated when he finished. "Marcus, that's incredible. When was the last time you had the chance to work on something that actually challenged your education and experience?" "It's been a while," Marcus admitted. "But Elena, there are risks involved. This isn't just fixing someone's refrigerator. This is cutting-edge technology with potential legal and safety implications that I don't fully understand." Elena was quiet for a moment, and Marcus could hear the sounds of her office in the background. She worked as a project manager for a non-profit organization that provided technology access to underserved communities, and she understood the balance between opportunity and responsibility. "Marcus, can I ask you something honestly?" "Of course." "When was the last time you were excited about your work? When was the last time you came home from a job feeling like you'd accomplished something meaningful instead of just earned enough money to pay the bills?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt genuine enthusiasm for a professional challenge. The last time he'd solved a problem that required real intellectual engagement rather than routine technical knowledge. "It's been a long time," he admitted. "Lily notices these things, you know. She's been asking me why you always seem tired. Why you don't talk about your work the way other parents talk about their jobs. Children pick up on their parents' attitudes about their careers and their dreams." Marcus felt tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. "I'm doing the best I can, Elena. I'm providing for her, keeping us stable." "I know you are, and you're a wonderful father. But Marcus, providing for someone isn't the same as showing them what it looks like to pursue something meaningful with your life. This opportunity sounds like it could give you both financial security and professional fulfillment. Those don't come along very often." After ending the call with Elena, Marcus sat on the park bench for another hour, watching families enjoy their morning and thinking about the choices that had led him to this moment. He'd spent 12 years convincing himself that stability was more important than ambition, that being a reliable provider was more valuable than pursuing challenging work. But Victoria's offer represented something he'd thought was permanently out of reach. the chance to use his education for something more significant than replacing heating elements in electric dryers. The opportunity to show Lily that her father was capable of taking on challenges that mattered. Marcus's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed Frank Morrison, one of his regular commercial clients who owned a chain of laundromats throughout the city. Marcus, I hate to bother you, but we've got an emergency at the Sunset location. The main electrical panel is throwing sparks, and I'm worried about a fire hazard. Can you get over there as soon as possible? Marcus sighed, recognizing the familiar pull of immediate responsibility over long-term opportunity. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Frank. The Sunset Laundromat was a testament to the kind of practical, unglamorous work that had defined Marcus's adult life. The building was old and poorly maintained, filled with industrial washing machines that demanded constant attention and creative problem-solving to keep running. The electrical panel that Frank had called about was indeed a fire hazard, its ancient breakers sparking every time someone plugged in a high-draw appliance. Marcus spent 3 hours replacing the entire panel, working in cramped conditions while customers complained about the interruption to their laundry routines. The work was physically demanding and intellectually unchallenging, exactly the kind of job that he could complete efficiently while his mind wandered to other concerns. As Marcus installed the final circuit breaker, he found himself thinking about the quantum computer in Victoria's penthouse. The machine represented technology that could revolutionize entire industries, solve problems that conventional computers couldn't touch, advance human knowledge in ways that were difficult to imagine. The contrast between the two types of work couldn't have been more stark. One involved keeping aging equipment functional through incremental repairs and temporary fixes. The other offered the possibility of working on technology that could change the world. When Marcus finished the electrical panel replacement, Frank insisted on paying him a bonus for the emergency response time. Marcus, I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only technician in the city who can handle these old systems. The praise felt hollow rather than gratifying. Marcus had become indispensable to people like Frank precisely because he'd given up on work that required real expertise and innovation. He'd become very good at maintaining other people's aging infrastructure instead of building something new. As Marcus drove home that evening, he found himself thinking about the conversation he would have with Lily over dinner. She would ask about his day, and he would tell her about fixing Mrs. Rodriguez's garbage disposal and replacing Frank's electrical panel. Lily would listen politely, but he could see in her eyes the growing understanding that her father's work involved solving the same, simple problems over and over again. What would it be like to tell Lily that he was working on a quantum computer? What would it mean to come home excited about intellectual challenges that pushed the boundaries of his knowledge and experience? Marcus pulled into his apartment complex just as the sun was setting behind the hills of San Francisco. The building was one of the older residential developments in the area, showing its age but maintained well enough to provide safe, affordable housing for working families. His and Lily's unit was on the 3rd floor, overlooking a small courtyard where children played while their parents cooked dinner and helped with homework. Lily was waiting for him in the apartment, already working on her science project at the kitchen table. She'd constructed an elaborate model of the solar system using painted styrofoam balls and wire supports, and she was carefully positioning each planet according to the distances she'd calculated from her research. "Dad, look what I figured out," Lily said without looking up from her project. If you could travel at the speed of light, it would still take more than 4 years to reach the nearest star. But scientists think there might be ways to make space travel faster using something called quantum mechanics. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. "What do you know about quantum mechanics?" Lily looked up from her project with the serious expression she wore when discussing topics that fascinated her. "I was reading about it online. It's really complicated, but basically, quantum mechanics is about how things work differently when they're really, really small. And some scientists think that understanding quantum mechanics could help us build computers that are much more powerful than regular computers." Marcus sat down beside his daughter, marveling at her natural curiosity and her ability to grasp complex concepts that many adults found intimidating. "That's exactly right, sweetheart. Quantum computers could solve problems that would take regular computers thousands of years." "Do you think anyone in San Francisco is working on quantum computers?" Lily asked. "It would be so cool to meet someone who's building technology for space travel or time machines or artificial intelligence." Marcus looked at his daughter's eager face and felt something shift inside his chest. Here was a child who dreamed about the future, who believed that someone, somewhere, was working on solutions to humanity's biggest challenges. Here was a child who deserved to see her father as someone who contributed to those solutions, rather than just maintaining systems that other people had built. "Lily," Marcus said carefully, "what would you think if I told you that I might have the chance to work on a quantum computer?" Lily's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? You could do that?" "Maybe. Someone offered me a job working on very advanced technology, but it would be different from the work I usually do. It might be more challenging and more risky." Lily set down the planet she'd been positioning and turned to face her father directly. "Dad, you're the smartest person I know. You can fix anything that's broken. If someone wants you to work on a quantum computer, you should totally do it." The simple confidence in Lily's voice nearly brought tears to Marcus's eyes. His daughter believed in his abilities in a way that he'd forgotten how to believe in himself. She saw him as someone capable of taking on the world's most challenging problems, rather than someone who'd settled for smaller ambitions. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a calculator and a notebook, working through the financial implications of Victoria's offer. $75,000 would eliminate his credit card debt, provide a substantial emergency fund, and allow him to make a significant contribution to Lily's college savings account. But beyond the financial considerations, Marcus found himself thinking about the intellectual challenges that Victoria's project would provide. How long had it been since he'd worked on a problem that required him to learn new concepts and push the boundaries of his expertise? How long had it been since he'd felt genuinely excited about understanding how something worked, rather than just making it functional again? Marcus pulled out his laptop and spent several hours researching the current state of quantum computing technology. The field had advanced dramatically since his graduate school days, with major breakthroughs in quantum error correction, coherence stabilization, and practical applications. The machine that Victoria had shown him represented technology that was genuinely at the cutting edge of human knowledge. As Marcus read about recent developments in quantum computing, he felt the familiar excitement that had once driven him through years of challenging academic work. The field was at a tipping point where theoretical breakthroughs were becoming practical applications, where concepts that had once been purely academic were being transformed into tools that could solve real-world problems. At midnight, Marcus closed his laptop and made his decision. He would call Victoria in the morning and accept her offer, not just because of the money, but because this was his chance to show Lily what it looked like when someone pursued work that mattered. Marcus slept better that night than he had in months, dreaming about quantum states and crystalline processors instead of broken garbage disposals and aging electrical panels. When he woke up the next morning, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine enthusiasm for the workday ahead. Marcus called Victoria at exactly 8 o'clock, as soon as he thought she might be awake and available to talk. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting for his call. "Dr. Sterling, this is Marcus Chen. I've made my decision about your offer. I'm listening." Marcus took a deep breath, committing himself to a path that would change everything about his professional life. "I'd like to accept the position. When would you like me to start?" Victoria's response carried a mixture of relief and satisfaction that suggested this outcome was more important to her than she'd initially let on. "Mr. Chen, I was hoping you'd say that. How does this afternoon sound?" That afternoon, Marcus returned to Victoria's penthouse with a completely different mindset than he'd had during his previous visits. Instead of carrying basic repair tools, he brought his old engineering textbooks, a laptop loaded with quantum computing simulation software, and the kind of focused energy he hadn't felt since graduate school. Victoria greeted him at the door wearing a lab coat over her usual practical clothing, her hair pulled back more severely than before. "I've prepared a workspace for you," Victoria said, leading him toward the room containing the quantum computer. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of ordering some specialized diagnostic equipment that should arrive later today." The quantum computer room had been transformed since Marcus's previous visit. Additional workstations had been installed around the perimeter, each equipped with high-resolution displays showing different aspects of the machine's operational status. The air hummed with the sound of enhanced cooling systems, and Marcus could feel the electromagnetic fields generated by the quantum processing components. "Before we begin," Victoria said, "I need you to understand something about the nature of this project. What I'm about to show you is classified information that could have significant implications for national security and industrial competitiveness. Marcus felt a chill of apprehension. What kind of implications? Victoria activated one of the workstation displays, revealing a complex organizational chart that showed connections between government agencies, private corporations, and research institutions. For the past 15 years, quantum computing development has been carefully controlled by a consortium of organizations that includes the Department of Defense, the National Security Agency, and several major technology corporations. She pointed to different nodes on the organizational chart. This consortium has been working to ensure that quantum computing advances remain within a controlled environment, limiting access to technology that could disrupt existing power structures in computing, cryptography, and artificial intelligence. Marcus studied the chart, recognizing some of the corporate names but understanding very little about the relationships between them. And your quantum computer? My quantum computer represents a breakthrough that bypasses many of the technical limitations that have kept quantum computing expensive and inaccessible. If this technology became widely available, it could democratize computational power in ways that certain organizations would find very threatening. Victoria's expression grew troubled. 3 months ago, I was approached by representatives from Quantum Dynamics Corporation, one of the consortium members. They offered to purchase my research for an amount that would have made me extremely wealthy, but would have ensured that this technology never reached the public. Marcus felt his stomach tighten with familiar anxiety. And you refused? I refused because I didn't spend 20 years of my life developing this technology so that it could be locked away in a corporate vault. But refusing their offer has created complications that go beyond simple business disagreements. Victoria walked to a filing cabinet and removed a thick folder labeled Security Incidents. Inside, Marcus found photographs, police reports, and what appeared to be surveillance logs documenting a pattern of harassment and intimidation that had been escalating over the past several weeks. Someone broke into my previous laboratory and destroyed 6 months of research data. My car has been vandalized twice. I've received threatening phone calls at all hours of the day and night. Most concerning, people have been asking questions about my personal life, my family connections, and my financial situation. Marcus flipped through the documentation, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the implications of what Victoria was showing him. Have you contacted the police? The police have been remarkably uninterested in investigating incidents involving someone who works on classified technology projects. They seem to believe that my security concerns are either paranoid or related to legitimate government oversight that they're not authorized to interfere with. Victoria's voice carried the frustration of someone who discovered that the law enforcement system wasn't designed to protect people in her situation. Mr. Chen, I need you to understand that accepting this job means accepting certain risks. There are people who would prefer that this quantum computer never becomes operational. Marcus set down the security folder, weighing his desire to work on cutting-edge technology against his responsibility to protect Lily from potential danger. What kind of people are we talking about? Corporate executives who stand to lose billions of dollars if quantum computing becomes accessible to smaller competitors. Government agencies that rely on cryptographic systems that quantum computers could render obsolete. Foreign intelligence services that would do anything to acquire this technology for their own purposes. The scope of potential threats made Marcus feel dizzy. He'd spent his adult life avoiding exactly these kinds of complications, focusing on work that involved clear problems with straightforward solutions. Dr. Sterling, I appreciate your honesty, but I have to think about my daughter's safety. If working on this project puts her at risk. Victoria's expression softened with what appeared to be genuine empathy. Mr. Chen, I understand your concerns, and I wouldn't ask you to take risks that could endanger your family. But I also think you should know that walking away from this project won't necessarily protect you from the people who are already aware of our connection. Marcus felt cold dread spreading through his chest. What do you mean? Victoria activated another workstation display, showing surveillance photographs that made Marcus's blood freeze. Images of him entering and leaving Victoria's building. Pictures of Lily walking to school. Photographs of his apartment complex taken from multiple angles with telephoto lenses. These photographs were taken over the past week by people who are very interested in anyone I might hire to work on this project. Mr. Chen, Whether you take this job or not, you're already on their radar as someone who has access to information they consider sensitive. Marcus stared at the surveillance photographs, understanding that his life had already been fundamentally altered by circumstances beyond his control. The decision he thought he was making about accepting Victoria's job offer was really a decision about how to respond to threats that already existed. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that your safest option might be to help me complete this project as quickly as possible. Once the quantum computer is operational and the technology has been demonstrated publicly, the people who are trying to suppress it will have less incentive to target individuals involved in its development. Victoria's logic had a terrifying kind of sense to it. If Marcus was already being watched because of his connection to Victoria, then his best protection might be to ensure that the project succeeded rather than failed. And if we can't get the computer working, then we become loose ends that certain people might decide to eliminate. The casual way Victoria delivered this assessment made Marcus realize that she'd been living with these threats for much longer than she'd initially indicated. This wasn't just about corporate competition or government oversight. This was about people who were prepared to commit violence to protect their interests. Marcus spent the next hour studying the quantum computer's diagnostic systems, while Victoria provided detailed explanations of the machine's architecture and operational requirements. The technology was indeed revolutionary, incorporating advances in quantum error correction and coherent stabilization that surpassed anything Marcus had encountered in academic literature. The theoretical processing power is extraordinary, Marcus observed, reviewing the technical specifications. This machine could break most current encryption systems in a matter of hours rather than the centuries that conventional computers would require. Exactly, which is why certain government agencies consider it a national security threat, and why certain corporations consider it an existential business risk. Victoria pulled up a series of calculations showing the potential applications for the quantum computer's processing capabilities. Drug discovery algorithms that could identify new treatments in weeks rather than years. Climate modeling systems that could predict environmental changes with unprecedented accuracy. Artificial intelligence architectures that could surpass human cognitive abilities in specific domains. This isn't just about faster computers, Mr. Chen. This is about tools that could help solve some of humanity's most challenging problems. Cancer research, renewable energy development, space exploration, artificial intelligence. The applications are virtually limitless. Marcus felt his old academic excitement returning as he contemplated the possibilities that Victoria was describing. This was exactly the kind of work he'd dreamed about during graduate school, the opportunity to contribute to technological advances that could genuinely improve the world. Where do we start with the diagnostics? Victoria smiled with satisfaction, recognizing that Marcus had committed himself to the project despite the risks involved. We start by understanding exactly what happened during the cascade failure 3 days ago. I have comprehensive logs of every system parameter leading up to the malfunction. For the next 4 hours, Marcus and Victoria worked together analyzing the quantum computer's operational data with the focused intensity of detectives investigating a complex crime. The diagnostic information was extraordinarily detailed, providing nanosecond by nanosecond records of quantum state transitions, coherence measurements, and error correction activities. Here, Marcus said, pointing to an anomaly in the data logs. Look at this pattern in the coherence stabilization system. The quantum states were maintaining perfect stability until 14 hours, 32 minutes, and 17 seconds. Then something caused a systematic degradation that cascaded through the entire processor. Victoria leaned over his shoulder to examine the data more closely, and Marcus caught a hint of expensive perfume mixed with the ozone smell of high-voltage electronics. I see it. But what could cause that kind of sudden destabilization? The environmental controls were perfect, the power supply was stable, and the cooling systems were operating within normal parameters. Marcus scrolled through additional diagnostic screens, looking for correlations between the coherence failure and other system variables. It almost looks like external interference, something that disrupted the electromagnetic shielding around the quantum processing chamber. External interference? You mean like radio frequency emissions from nearby electronic devices? Marcus shook his head, studying the data patterns more carefully. No, this is too focused and too intense to be accidental interference. This looks deliberate. Victoria's expression grew troubled as she processed the implications of Marcus's observation. Are you suggesting that someone deliberately sabotaged the quantum computer? Marcus pulled up additional diagnostic screens comparing the interference patterns with known signatures of various electronic devices. I'm suggesting that someone with sophisticated equipment and detailed knowledge of your system's vulnerabilities targeted specific components at precisely the right moment to cause maximum damage. The realization that the quantum computer's failure might be the result of deliberate sabotage rather than technical malfunction changed everything about their diagnostic approach. Instead of looking for component failures or design flaws, they needed to identify how an external attack could have penetrated the machine's shielding and targeted its most vulnerable systems. Dr. Sterling, I need to ask you something that might sound paranoid. Is it possible that someone has been monitoring your work closely enough to understand exactly how to disable this computer? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her expression cycling through surprise, anger, and what looked like resigned acceptance. Mr. Chen, 3 months ago I fired my research assistant for what I thought was incompetence and poor attention to detail. Dr. Amanda Foster had been working with me for 2 years, and she had complete access to all of my technical specifications and operational procedures. Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. And where is Dr. Foster now? According to her LinkedIn profile, she's working as a senior quantum systems analyst for Quantum Dynamics Corporation. The implications hit Marcus like cold water. Victoria's former research assistant was now working for the same company that had tried to purchase Victoria's research, and she would have intimate knowledge of the quantum computer's design vulnerabilities. Dr. Sterling, I think we need to assume that everything about this computer's construction and operation is known to people who want to prevent it from working, which means we need to approach the repairs with the assumption that we're being actively opposed by people with significant resources and technical expertise. Victoria activated her tablet and began scrolling through what appeared to be security camera footage from the building's parking garage. Mr. Chen, I think you should see this. The footage showed Marcus arriving for their meeting that morning, but it also showed something else. A white van with tinted windows had been parked across the street from the building entrance, and the camera had captured images of people with telephoto lenses photographing everyone who entered or left the building. They're watching everyone who comes here, Victoria said. Which means they know exactly who you are and why you're here. Marcus felt his anxiety spike as he realized that his connection to Victoria's project was no longer secret. What does this mean for my daughter's safety? Victoria's expression grew compassionate but serious. It means that we need to take precautions to ensure that Lily is protected while we complete this project. I have contacts who specialize in personal security for people working on sensitive projects. The thought of needing professional security for his 8-year-old daughter made Marcus feel sick to his stomach. This morning he'd been worried about paying rent and fixing broken appliances. Now he was contemplating threats that required armed protection. Dr. Sterling, maybe this isn't worth the risk. Maybe I should walk away from this project and hope that these people lose interest in me. Victoria turned away from the security footage and looked directly at Marcus with an intensity that was almost physical. Mr. Chen, these people don't lose interest. They eliminate threats. The safest thing for you and Lily is to help me complete this project successfully and publicly, so that suppressing the technology is no longer a viable option for them. Marcus understood the logic, but the emotional weight of putting his daughter in potential danger was overwhelming. How do I explain to an 8-year-old that she needs protection from people who want to hurt her father? You don't explain it to her. You arrange for her to spend some time with relatives or friends while we finish this work. A week or 2 at most, if we can solve the technical problems quickly. Marcus thought about his limited options for ensuring Lily's safety. Elena would take her without question, but Elena's new husband worked in the tech industry and might ask uncomfortable questions about why Marcus suddenly needed emergency childcare. His elderly aunt in Sacramento could provide a safe haven, but explaining the situation to her would be complicated. I'll figure something out, Marcus said finally. But Dr. Sterling, I need you to be completely honest with me about the timeline. How long do you realistically think this will take? Victoria consulted her tablet, reviewing what appeared to be a detailed project schedule. If my analysis is correct, and if the quantum computer's failure was caused by the specific type of sabotage you've identified, then repairing the damage and implementing additional security measures should take approximately 1 week. Marcus felt some of his anxiety ease slightly. 1 week was manageable. Lily could stay with Elena, and Marcus could focus entirely on the technical challenges without worrying about immediate threats to his daughter's safety. And after the computer is operational, what happens then? Victoria smiled with something that looked like anticipation. Then we demonstrate capabilities that will make suppressing this technology impossible. We solve problems that have been considered unsolvable, we break encryption systems that have been considered unbreakable, and we prove that quantum computing can be accessible to researchers and institutions that have been locked out of the field. The scope of Victoria's ambitions was both inspiring and terrifying. Marcus had signed up to repair a broken computer, but he was beginning to understand that he'd actually committed to participating in a technological revolution that would have profound implications for society. Dr. Sterling, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why is this so important to you? I mean, beyond the scientific achievement, why are you willing to risk everything to make this technology public? Victoria was quiet for a moment, and Marcus saw something vulnerable flash across her usually composed features. Mr. Chen, my younger brother died of a rare genetic disease when he was 16 years old. The drug that could have saved his life existed in experimental form, but the clinical trials and approval processes were expected to take 8 to 10 years. She walked to one of the workstations and pulled up a research article about pharmaceutical development timelines. Quantum computers could simulate molecular interactions with the precision needed to identify effective treatments in months rather than years. The technology we're working on could prevent families from experiencing what mine went through. Marcus felt his resolve strengthen as he understood the personal motivation behind Victoria's professional dedication. This wasn't just about scientific achievement or corporate competition. This was about using advanced technology to solve problems that caused real human suffering. Then let's fix your computer and change the world. Victoria's smile was radiant with gratitude and determination. Mr. Chen, I think this is the beginning of a partnership that's going to accomplish something extraordinary. As the afternoon turned to evening, Marcus and Victoria worked together with increasing efficiency and mutual respect. Marcus's diagnostic skills complemented Victoria's theoretical knowledge, and they began to develop a comprehensive understanding of both the technical problems and the security challenges they needed to address. The quantum computer's sabotage had been subtle but devastating, targeting specific components in a sequence designed to cause maximum damage while appearing to be random system failures. Repairing the damage would require not just replacing damaged components, but implementing new security measures to prevent future attacks. We're going to need specialized parts that aren't readily available through normal supply chains, Marcus observed, reviewing the list of components that needed replacement. Some of these quantum coherent stabilizers are custom manufactured with lead times of several months. Victoria smiled with the confidence of someone who'd anticipated this obstacle. Mr. Chen, one of the advantages of having unlimited resources is that you can maintain stockpiles of critical components. I have everything we need in a secure storage facility across town. As they prepared to end their first day of collaboration, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine excitement about returning to work the next day. The challenges they faced were complex and potentially dangerous, but they were also intellectually stimulating in ways that reminded him why he'd fallen in love with engineering in the first place. Dr. Sterling, before I leave, I need to ask you about tomorrow's security arrangements. If these people are monitoring your building, they're going to know that I'm working on this project full-time now. Victoria consulted her tablet, reviewing what appeared to be a security protocol document. I've arranged for additional building security starting tomorrow morning. Professional personnel who specialize in protecting sensitive research projects. You'll be safe while you're here. Marcus nodded, understanding that Victoria had been preparing for escalated security measures long before he'd agreed to take the job. And my commute? If they're photographing everyone who enters and leaves this building. I'll arrange for secure transportation. A driver who knows how to detect and evade surveillance. A vehicle with appropriate defensive modifications. Mr. Chen, I know this sounds like something from a spy movie, but these precautions are unfortunately necessary. As Marcus prepared to leave Victoria's penthouse, he found himself looking forward to the challenges of the next day while simultaneously worrying about the safety implications for his family. The quantum computer represented the most intellectually stimulating work opportunity he'd encountered since graduate school, but it also represented risks that extended far beyond his professional life. "Dr. Sterling, thank you for trusting me with this project. I'll see you tomorrow morning." Victoria walked him to the door with a kind of formal courtesy that suggested she understood the magnitude of what she was asking from him. "Mr. Chen, thank you for having the courage to take on challenges that most people would consider too risky. Your father would be proud of the man you've become." The elevator ride to the parking garage gave Marcus time to think about the conversation he would need to have with Elena about emergency childcare arrangements for Lily. How do you explain to your ex-wife that your daughter needs protection from corporate criminals without sounding like you've lost touch with reality? As Marcus drove home through the evening traffic, he found himself checking his rearview mirror more frequently than usual, looking for signs that he was being followed. The white van that Victoria had shown him in the security footage could be anywhere, containing people whose job was to monitor his movements and report back to organizations with virtually unlimited resources. Marcus pulled into his apartment complex and sat in his car for several minutes, studying the parking lot and surrounding buildings for anything that seemed out of place. A new sedan with tinted windows was parked near the building entrance, and Marcus noticed that its engine was running despite the fact that no one appeared to be inside. The walk from his car to the apartment building felt longer than usual, and Marcus found himself hyper-aware of shadows and unexpected sounds. By the time he reached his front door, he was convinced that accepting Victoria's job offer had fundamentally altered his family's safety situation in ways that couldn't be undone. Lily greeted him at the door with her usual enthusiasm, eager to show him the progress she'd made on her solar system project. "Dad, I figured out how to calculate the orbital velocities for all the planets. Do you want to see the equations?" Marcus pulled his daughter into a hug that lasted longer than usual, feeling the weight of responsibility for protecting her from dangers she couldn't possibly understand. "Of course, sweetheart. Show me everything you've learned." As Lily explained her calculations with the passionate intensity that she applied to all of her academic projects, Marcus found himself thinking about Victoria's brother, who had died because life-saving technology had been delayed by bureaucratic processes. How many children like Lily could benefit from advances in quantum computing? How many families could be spared tragedy if powerful computational tools were available to researchers working on medical breakthroughs? "Lily," Marcus said when she finished explaining her orbital velocity calculations, "I need to tell you about some changes that are going to happen over the next couple of weeks." Lily's expression grew serious as she recognized the tone that adults used when discussing important matters. "What kind of changes?" Marcus chose his words carefully, balancing honesty with age-appropriate explanations. "I'm going to be working on a very important project that requires me to focus completely on technical problems for about a week. I was thinking you might like to spend some time with your mom while I finish this work." Lily considered this proposal with the thoughtful expression she wore when processing new information. "Is it the quantum computer project you mentioned yesterday?" Marcus was continually amazed by his daughter's ability to remember and connect pieces of information that adults often overlooked. "Yes, it's the quantum computer project. It's turning out to be more complicated than I expected, and I want to make sure I can give it my complete attention." Lily nodded with the kind of mature understanding that made Marcus's chest ache with pride and concern. "Dad, if you're working on something that could help scientists solve important problems, then I think it's okay if I stay with Mom for a while. But you have to promise to tell me everything about the quantum computer when you're finished." Marcus pulled Lily into another hug, marveling at her generosity and wisdom. "I promise, sweetheart. And Lily, this project is exactly the kind of work that I've always wanted to do. It's the first time in a long time that I've had the chance to use my education for something that really matters." That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Marcus called Elena to arrange emergency childcare, without revealing the specific reasons why Lily needed to stay with her mother for an indefinite period. Elena agreed immediately, asking only whether Marcus was safe and whether there was anything she could do to help. "Elena, I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to know that this project could change our family's financial situation permanently. If everything goes well, Lily's college education will be completely funded, and we'll have security that we've never had before." Elena's response carried warmth and confidence that reminded Marcus why he'd fallen in love with her years earlier. "Marcus, I trust your judgment. Lily will be safe here, and you can focus completely on your work." Just promise me that you'll be careful and that you'll call if you need help with anything." After ending the call with Elena, Marcus spent several hours researching quantum computing security protocols and electromagnetic interference patterns, preparing himself for the technical challenges he would face over the next week. The more he learned about the sophistication of the sabotage that had disabled Victoria's computer, the more impressed he became with the knowledge and resources of their adversaries. Marcus fell asleep that night with his laptop open to research articles about quantum cryptography and industrial espionage, dreaming about crystalline processors and the equations that govern subatomic particles. For the first time in years, his dreams were filled with mathematical elegance rather than broken appliances and unpaid bills. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Victoria's building in an armored sedan, driven by a former military specialist who introduced himself only as Rodriguez. The vehicle's windows were tinted dark enough to provide complete privacy, and Marcus noticed that Rodriguez kept one hand near what was obviously a concealed weapon throughout the drive. The reality of requiring armed protection to repair a computer made Marcus question every decision that had led him to this moment. Victoria's penthouse had been transformed overnight into something resembling a high-security research facility. Additional personnel moved through the space with purposeful efficiency, installing what appeared to be advanced surveillance detection equipment and electromagnetic shielding devices. The quantum computer room now required biometric identification for entry, and Marcus noticed that armed security personnel had been positioned at strategic locations throughout the apartment. "Mr. Chen," Victoria said, greeting him with the kind of focused intensity that suggested she'd been awake most of the night preparing for this phase of the project. "I hope you're ready for some intensive work. We've received intelligence suggesting that our adversaries are planning to escalate their interference attempts." Marcus followed Victoria into the quantum computer room, where he discovered that the machine had been partially disassembled during the night. Critical components lay arranged on specialized work surfaces, each one tagged with diagnostic codes and handling instructions. The sight of the dismantled processor made Marcus realize that there would be no turning back from this project until it reached completion. "We've identified 17 separate components that were damaged during the sabotage attack," Victoria explained, handing Marcus a detailed analysis report. "Some of the damage appears to be the result of focused electromagnetic pulses designed to overload specific quantum coherence stabilizers. Other components show signs of more subtle interference, frequency modulation attacks that gradually degraded performance over several hours." Marcus studied the damage analysis, marveling at the sophistication of the attack that had disabled Victoria's computer. This level of technical knowledge suggests that whoever did this has access to detailed specifications about your system's architecture, someone with intimate familiarity with quantum processing vulnerabilities. Victoria's expression darkened with anger that she'd apparently been suppressing for days. Dr. Amanda Foster, my former research assistant, had complete access to every aspect of this system's design and operation. She helped me calibrate the quantum coherence stabilizers, she assisted with the electromagnetic shielding installation, and she participated in all of our security protocol development. The betrayal by someone Victoria had trusted professionally made Marcus understand why she'd been so cautious about revealing the full scope of the threats they faced. And now she's working for Quantum Dynamics Corporation, the same company that tried to purchase your research. Amanda didn't just take a job with our competitors, Mr. Chen. She provided them with information that allowed them to sabotage 2 years of work with surgical precision. Every component that was damaged represents months of development and testing that Amanda was personally involved in. Victoria activated one of the workstation displays, showing a timeline of system performance degradation that correlated perfectly with Dr. Foster's access to the laboratory facilities. The attack wasn't a single event. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign of sabotage that began weeks before the final cascade failure. Marcus felt a mixture of professional outrage and personal anxiety as he contemplated the implications of facing adversaries with that level of technical sophistication and insider knowledge. "Dr. Sterling, if they know everything about your system's vulnerabilities, how do we prevent them from attacking us again once we've completed the repairs?" Victoria smiled with the kind of confidence that suggested she'd been anticipating this question. "By implementing security measures that Amanda Foster never had access to, quantum encryption protocols that I developed independently, electromagnetic shielding configurations that I never shared with anyone, and biometric access controls that will make future sabotage attempts impossible. For the next 6 hours, Marcus and Victoria worked together with the focused intensity of surgeons performing life-saving operations. Each quantum coherence stabilizer required precise calibration to maintain the subatomic conditions necessary for quantum processing. The electromagnetic shielding demanded mathematical calculations that pushed Marcus's engineering knowledge to its limits. As they worked, Marcus found himself developing a deeper appreciation for Victoria's genius and dedication. The quantum computer represented not just technical achievement, but a personal mission to democratize computational power that had been artificially restricted by corporate and government interests. Dr. Sterling, Marcus said as they installed the 7th replacement component, "I need to understand something about the bigger picture. Once we get this computer operational, what prevents Quantum Dynamics Corporation from simply stealing your designs and mass-producing competing systems?" Victoria paused in her work, setting down the delicate quantum processor component she'd been calibrating. "Mr. Chen, the beauty of what we're building is that it can't be easily replicated without understanding principles that I've never published and never shared with anyone." She activated a tablet showing technical specifications that made Marcus's head spin with their complexity. "The quantum error correction algorithms that make this system practical are based on mathematical proofs that I've spent 15 years developing. Quantum Dynamics Corporation can steal individual components, but they can't steal the theoretical foundation that makes those components work together effectively." Marcus felt relief and admiration as he understood that Victoria had protected her most important innovations, even from trusted collaborators like Dr. Foster. So even with insider knowledge, they can't simply duplicate your work. They can sabotage existing systems, but they can't build competing systems without theoretical breakthroughs that would take them years to achieve independently. Which is why their strategy has focused on preventing my work from succeeding rather than trying to replicate it. As the afternoon progressed, Marcus and Victoria developed an efficient collaboration rhythm that reminded him of his most productive days in graduate school. Victoria's theoretical expertise complemented Marcus's practical engineering skills, and together they solved problems that neither could have addressed alone. The quantum computer began to show signs of returning functionality as they completed each component replacement and calibration. Diagnostic displays that had shown error messages for days began displaying normal operational parameters. The crystalline processing chamber started maintaining the ultra-low temperatures required for quantum coherence. "Mr. Chen, I think we're ready for the first functionality test," Victoria announced as they completed the final electromagnetic shielding installation. "If our repairs have been successful, this system should be able to perform basic quantum calculations within the next few minutes." Marcus felt his heart racing as Victoria activated the quantum computer's startup sequence. After 2 days of intensive work, they were about to discover whether their efforts had been successful or whether additional problems remained to be solved. The machine's startup process was hypnotic to watch. Cooling systems gradually reduced the processing chamber temperature to near absolute zero. Electromagnetic field generators created the precise conditions necessary for quantum particle manipulation. Diagnostic systems performed thousands of tests to ensure that every component was functioning within acceptable parameters. "Quantum coherence established," Victoria announced, reading from one of the diagnostic displays. "Electromagnetic isolation confirmed. Processing chamber temperature stable at 0.01 Kelvin. Mr. Chen, I think we've done it." Marcus watched as the quantum computer began its first calculations in nearly a week, processing mathematical problems that would have required conventional computers days or weeks to solve. The machine's crystalline components glowed with ethereal light as subatomic particles existed in multiple states simultaneously, performing parallel calculations that defied conventional understanding of computational processes. "What should we test first?" Marcus asked, marveling at the operational status displays that showed the quantum computer performing at full capacity. Victoria's expression grew intense with anticipation, something that will demonstrate capabilities that our adversaries can't suppress or deny. Something that will prove to the world that quantum computing can be accessible to researchers and institutions that have been locked out of this technology. She activated a complex problem set that appeared to involve protein folding calculations for cancer research. "Mr. Chen, what we're about to do would normally require a pharmaceutical company's entire computational infrastructure running for several months. Our quantum computer should solve this problem in approximately 20 minutes. Marcus watched as the machine processed molecular interactions with precision that seemed almost magical. Protein structures rotated and evolved on the display screens, showing how potential cancer treatments might interact with cellular targets. The calculations that appeared would normally represent millions of dollars in research costs and years of development time. 15 minutes remaining, Victoria announced, monitoring the quantum computer's progress with obvious satisfaction. Mr. Chen, you've just helped complete one of the most important technological achievements of the century. Marcus felt pride and excitement that he hadn't experienced since his graduate research days. This was exactly the kind of work he'd dreamed about during years of fixing broken appliances and replacing aging electrical systems. Work that could genuinely improve the world rather than just maintaining other people's convenience. The protein folding calculations completed with results that made Victoria gasp with excitement. Mr. Chen, these results identify 3 potential cancer treatment compounds that have never been tested before. This 20-minute calculation might have just saved thousands of lives. As they prepared to run additional test calculations, Marcus heard unfamiliar sounds from the building's hallway. Footsteps that seemed too heavy and too numerous to belong to normal building residents. Victoria's expression immediately shifted to high alert as she recognized the same sounds. Security protocol activation, Victoria announced, touching a control panel that immediately locked down the penthouse entrance and activated what appeared to be an emergency communication system. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he realized that their adversaries had apparently decided to move beyond surveillance and sabotage to more direct intervention. Dr. Sterling, what exactly is happening? Victoria consulted a security display showing multiple armed individuals moving through the building's stairwells and elevator systems. Quantum Dynamics Corporation has apparently decided that allowing us to complete this project successfully represents an unacceptable threat to their business interests. The implications hit Marcus like ice water. They weren't just facing corporate competition or bureaucratic interference. They were facing people who were prepared to use violence to prevent quantum computing technology from becoming publicly accessible. How long can the security systems hold them off? Marcus asked, trying to maintain focus on practical considerations rather than panic about the danger they faced. Victoria activated additional security protocols, and Marcus heard the sounds of reinforced barriers engaging throughout the penthouse. Long enough for us to complete one final demonstration that will make suppressing this technology impossible. She activated the quantum computer's most advanced calculation protocol, initiating what appeared to be a comprehensive analysis of global climate modeling data. Mr. Chen, in approximately 10 minutes this machine will complete calculations that prove quantum computing can solve environmental problems that have been considered impossible to address. Marcus understood that Victoria was racing to demonstrate the quantum computer's capabilities before their adversaries could prevent the technology from reaching public attention. The next few minutes would determine whether their work resulted in technological breakthrough or personal tragedy. Dr. Sterling, after this demonstration, then what? How do we get out of here safely? Victoria smiled with the kind of calm confidence that suggested she'd been preparing for this contingency throughout the project. Mr. Chen, sometimes the best way to defeat people who want to suppress information is to make that information so public that suppression becomes impossible. She activated a live streaming system that began broadcasting their quantum computer demonstration to academic institutions, news organizations, and research facilities around the world. In 5 minutes, thousands of people will have documented proof that accessible quantum computing technology exists and works effectively. Marcus felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration as he realized that they were about to change the world regardless of what happened to them personally. The quantum computer completed its climate modeling calculations with results that would revolutionize environmental research and policy development. Mr. Chen, Victoria said, as emergency sirens began sounding throughout the building, thank you for having the courage to finish what we started. Your daughter will grow up in a world where advanced technology serves humanity rather than corporate interests. As armed security personnel engaged with the intruders somewhere below them, Marcus watched the quantum computer's final calculations stream to institutions around the globe, ensuring that the technology he'd helped repair would benefit researchers and scientists for generations to come. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his new laboratory at the University of California, watching his graduate students calibrate quantum processors that were based on Victoria's revolutionary designs. The Marcus Chen Institute for Accessible Quantum Computing had been established with funding from technology companies that wanted to develop practical applications for the breakthroughs that Victoria had made public during their dramatic demonstration. Victoria herself had become an international celebrity, traveling the world to establish quantum computing centers at universities and research institutions that had previously been unable to access such advanced technology. Dr. Amanda Foster and 17 Quantum Dynamics Corporation executives were serving federal prison sentences for corporate espionage and conspiracy charges. Most importantly, Lily was thriving in her new school's advanced science program, working on projects that involved quantum physics concepts she'd learned by visiting her father's laboratory after school. Marcus had kept his promise to tell her everything about the quantum computer project, and she'd decided that she wanted to become a quantum engineer when she grew up. "Dad," Lily said as they walked home from the laboratory that evening, "do you think we'll solve all the world's big problems with quantum computers?" Marcus smiled as he considered his daughter's question, thinking about the cancer treatments that were already being developed using Victoria's protein folding calculations, the climate solutions that were emerging from advanced environmental modeling, and the artificial intelligence breakthroughs that were accelerating human knowledge in countless fields. "I think we'll solve problems that we haven't even imagined yet, sweetheart. And the best part is that you'll be part of the generation that turns those solutions into reality." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.